Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, welcome in. We are back. We didn't know what we were going to, if we were going to be back live, if we were going to do a video, but we decided it probably made the most sense for us to come back to you guys live here. We are still at Family Sports. Megan, we just finished hearing from Chris McFarland. The room is all but emptied out. We do still have Arif Dean in here hanging out with us, so he's got to hear this. Does get the live performance today at least. But Megan, the Avs are done. There was only one deal that really came in after we had signed off, and it is a feel-good deal, and that's the main point of the acquisition. The Avs bring back Erik Johnson. Number 6 will be coming back to the Colorado Avalanche. Like I said, that definitely feels like more of a vibes, feel good. He's probably your 7th defenseman heading into the playoffs, but Avs are done for the day. It's Charlie Coyle. It's Brock Nelson last night. It's Erik Johnson this afternoon. All right, so you said that you were going to abstain from how you felt about the day till everything was in. Everything's in. How do you feel?
Feels pretty fair that I wanted to wait to weigh in on the trade.
Yes. No, that wasn't a criticism. That was I want to know what you think.
I know it wasn't a criticism. I'm just establishing how committed I was to details.
I love it.
Clarity. And getting a defenseman in at the wire does really help to paint a bigger picture, clearer picture, because that was a concern. And it fills the role of that 7th, 8th D in a way that feels a little more comfortable. I was worried with a player like Sam Malinsky being someone that they decide to keep over this deadline. You know, that was a name that I'd thrown around, like, I'm not sure what the fit is if they can't find opportunity for him to play on a consistent basis. So who is the type of player that doesn't need to play on a nightly basis that has experience to be a 7th D? And Erik Johnson does fit that bill. You know, it also adds something huge to that locker room that I think is similar to what Mikko Rantanen brought. It's a little bit of levity. It helps to round out that leadership group, and you replenish that a little bit with the return of Erik Johnson.
What? With the reflection on that? Sorry. I agree with a lot of what you said. Are you look, this is with all due respect to Erik Johnson. I'm really excited Erik Johnson's coming back. He's one of my favorite players that I've ever covered. I'm looking forward to him being back here. I feel like for me to have really felt as comfortable as I would like for that last D spot, I probably would have liked to see a step above what Erik Johnson is, but he's definitely going to bring some stability to that extra defenseman. But this probably does, in my opinion, put a little bit more pressure on Sam Malinsky. He is going to be in the lineup on most nights, most likely. He's for my money. I guess how am I adding this up here? Is he your 6th? I think he's your 6th, right? Sam Malinsky?
Oh, are we talking about EJ?
No. I think Sam Malinsky's probably your 6th. EJ's probably your 7th, probably pushing Keaton Middleton to 8 in an ideal scenario. Do
you think Erik Johnson over Keaton Middleton?
Yeah, I do. Probably.
He just has not played very much this year. And
no, and that's what I'm saying. Like it's this feels like a locker room move, right? Like this is we lost Mikko. We don't have Gabe around. That's a funny looking.
I'm just looking at the NHL edge stats of both Erik Johnson and Keaton Middleton. They both kind of weird ones.
Like I said, I do think that this is something, Megan, more than anything else. Yeah, we're trying to get that locker room feel back.
No, I certainly think it's a culture add, and it does still give you another option on the back end. It's not best case scenario in terms of what we would have liked to see them do there. If I'm being honest, I would have liked to see them target a top 4 defenseman who could play on a second pair or a third pair, so maybe not top 4, somewhere in that middle range, as Josh Manson insurance, because there is still concern about his availability and health. And if Josh Manson was unavailable to the Avs in the playoffs, for example, Sam Malinsky playing up in that role feels a little bit different. I know that Lindgren has eaten big minutes, but it just falls off pretty hard past Manson. And so I wanted them to get a little bit more security on the back end in that way. That's why players like Brandon Carlo were among some that we discussed. And that would have come at a pretty big expense. And they decided to commit some of their resources to shoring up the top 9 with the addition of Charlie Coyle. And so I think that they had to provide insurance for 2 different areas, and they had to pick between both.
I asked Chris McFarland because he had mentioned when they made the Mikko Rantanen deal that, hey, look, they had decided this team wasn't deep enough. This team didn't have lines 1 through 4 like they would want. They didn't have defensemen 1 through 6 like they would have liked. You and I talked about it even before the deadline passed, that we said, hey, look, this was the date that we said we had to wait to reserve judgment on that Mikko Rantanen deal to see how they do with the extra cap space, with the extra roster flexibility. When it's all said and done, Megan, how do you think they did?
I think they did pretty well with what was available to them. I think they had to juggle a few different needs for the team, and it was hard. Like, you had to evaluate the Casey Middlestat situation, and you had to move on from that and get committed to that. And so finding a trade partner for a struggling Casey Middlestat, we discussed off air that we're not even sure that Boston's a great fit for a player like Casey Middlestat. That becomes a difficult part of the equation to have to juggle. Kind of similar to where the Avs are at with needing to move on from Ryan Johansson. It comes on at a little bit of an expense because with Casey Middlestat, there's a couple more years past this that the other team has to take on. And so when you're juggling that in the mix, and then you're looking at a Josh Manson, who, when healthy, is one of the best options for that second pair. But, you know, they're taking a chance then that Josh Manson is going to be a player that's available to them, and they decide to replenish a little bit of depth. They move on from Calvin DeHaan. They add a depth piece in Jimmy Vesey. I overall think they addressed as many needs as they realistically could, while still navigating the Gabriel Landeskog lack of clarity.
All right, you use the word insurance, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because you made a great point to me off air that I wanted to talk about with Charlie Coyle. You and I mentioned right around 1 p.m. as the deadline was coming to a close that, hey, what you like about this guy is this is a player that you're bringing in and kind of asking him to play in a role a little bit lesser than what he's been used to in his career. And I think if everything goes according to plan, he's going to slot in on that third line. And I think the Avs are going to be happy with the fact that you've got Charlie Coyle, who's been a top 6 guy for all of his career, the vast majority of his career, now playing, down in that third line role. But there's a player that you mentioned that Charlie Coyle also provides some insurance for, and that is both injuries and just overall availability. What are your thoughts? I want you to be the one to be able to. I don't want to take credit for it. Because I thought this was an excellent point that, look, you just got to be realistic about it.
I'm talking about Charlie Coyle as a top 9 forward very intentionally, in part because his role in Boston, he was deployed in that way. And I know he didn't necessarily always thrive as a first or second line center in Boston, but he has found some success on the wing. And I am looking specifically at Val Nichushkin as a player that they needed a contingency plan for. As we've seen the last 2 playoff runs now, this is a player that has become unavailable to them. It leaves a huge, almost insurmountable hole at the top of the lineup that they need to account for. And so I've understood the concern around the expense of Charlie Coyle, especially when you're viewing him as strictly a third-line player. It certainly does feel rich. But you not only move on from the Casey Middlestat contract, but you're giving yourself some Val Nichushkin insurance. This is a player with his size. He's not an exact dupe for Val Nichushkin, but he's big, he's strong, and he has that long reach like a Val Nichushkin. He can play on the wing and help that second line. It's not going to completely fill Nichushkin's shoes, but it does give you a little bit of security on that second line.
And, look, not even talking about just the struggles that Val Nichushkin has had. He's dealt with a lot of injuries this year. There's also just a health availability issue that he's had a little bit this year. So when you made that point, I told you, I said, Megan, I think that's such a great call out. I hadn't really even thought about that. This is a player that, like you said, it's hard to replace Val Nichushkin. Charlie Coyle is not, this is Val Nichushkin 2.0. It's not that, but he's a player. And there it was. We knew it was going to go. He's a player that can, if that were to happen, at least gives you someone that, it's not completely like, well, we don't even know what we're doing here in this spot for Val Nichushkin. You've got an option there.
And that's where, in talking about my evaluation of the Avs at the deadline, you look down the lineup then, like let's say Charlie Coyle is then playing on a second line. The big picture for the bottom six does start to look a little bit grim because, we kind of talked about some of the extra guys that are in the mix there. It's Parker Kelly, it's Kivi Ranta, it's Miles Wood, it's Jimmy Vesey. And in talking about that fourth line in the cup run, it just doesn't still really touch what Helm, OC, and Cogliano were. It's great to have those options. It's where I would have maybe liked one more additional depth piece, but that's looking for perfection in a Stanley Cup cap era that every NHL team is trying to navigate these same hurdles. And so even just Jimmy Vesey and getting Jack Drury a little bit earlier with the Netchus trade, with the Rantanen trade, those are really important steps that the Avs took building up to this deadline that I think are going to be very important.
Let's hit this super chat here and let's talk about this, Megan. We got $5 from Dan the blog. $5 for Megan killing it with her targets and predictions. You had Ryan Lindgren on your board. You had Brock Nelson on your board. You had Charlie Coyle on your board. You've got to be feeling pretty good about where the Avs land today, just based on the way that you assess this team and their needs coming into this deadline.
And there's a reason I'm not, it's official, Eric Johnson. Yeah, that's cool.
Officially done. Breaking news, Meghan Angley, breaking news. It's official.
Meghan Angley said so. There's a reason I'm not doing that.
That's what she means by it's official. She said it, so it's done.
It's real. Danson Heinen to the Avs. Anyways. I'm happy. I picked my picks, though, based on what I felt was realistic. So it wasn't like this is just my dream if there were no rules.
Yeah.
It was actually, I think this player stylistically would fit, and I think there's a realistic chance they could acquire him. So that's why it's not like, this is a slam dunk. They knocked it out of the park because this is my favorite player ever in the whole world.
Yeah.
I think they all make a lot of sense on this Avs team. And I'm happy that it came to fruition because honestly, both Nelson and Coyle felt like a reach. That wasn't necessarily in my crystal ball. So that's where I feel extra excitement. I do think that does make this a more dangerous team because of a well-balanced attack. I even go back to the San Jose game. It was still pretty top
from
heavy.
Last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was still pretty top heavy. It was a dominant game and they score in all situations. You get the short-handed goal from Kivi Ranta, which is awesome. That Ross Colton goal comes back, but I still kind of attribute it to being a part of the mix. But then everything else is power play and 5v5. It's led from the top. That's still awesome. You want your stars to be doing that this time of year, but I still want to see more outside of that 5-man unit. And that's where an addition like a Nelson and a Charlie Coyle, I think can be extra pieces that are contributing to the bottom line. And it probably then makes the role of every line a little bit clearer. And so I think it improves everything at the end of the day to get two more guys that can hopefully improve the bottom line when it comes to goal scoring.
My favorite part when you and I were talking right before we went down to go into the locker room was that you had said, truthfully, I had Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle on my board of like, well, if you can't get one, get the other. Look, I know a lot of people are going to point at acquisition costs for both those players. You did pay a lot to get Brock Nelson. You did pay a lot to get Charlie Coyle. But I think when you look at, so I'm just going to go through here. Now when it's all said and done, here's the Avs group up front projected. You got Lehkonen with McKinnon and Netchus, which is a line that we've seen yield fantastic results in the last 6 weeks. Val Nichushkin with Brock Nelson and Jonathan Drouin. That's the group that we saw skating together today. And I think that's a grouping that you really like, and you like that mix. Yoel Kiviranta with Charlie Coyle and Ross Colton. Jimmy Vesey with Jack Drury and Logan O'Connor. Now, those last two lines right there are essentially what we saw last night. Obviously Charlie Coyle was not there last night. And then you've got your extras of Miles Wood and Parker Kelly. And for my money, Megan, Parker Kelly is probably in that lineup over Jimmy Vesey. And look, you're looking for more out of Miles Wood. Bye, Arif.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. And for the record, Arif did vehemently agree. It's Parker Kelly over Jimmy Vesey on a regular instance. And then look, you want more out of Miles Wood. If with all due respect to you all, Kiviranta, I'm now only in the room with Megan and Chloe, so I might get in trouble here.
Attack!
You want Miles Wood playing over Yoel Kiviranta, whether that be in your lineup or just in the game, one way or the other. So, look, I think that's a really, really good 1 through 4.
There's a different Miles Wood that we've seen outside of this season. I know it's been a struggle for him. And now that the deadline is passed, because that was a player is like they might have to consider moving on from. That's a luxury they can't afford to be paying for a fourth line player that's getting scratched on a given night. I think, though, going back to the Winnipeg series last year where it was Miles Wood, it was Ross Colton, and it was Yoel Kiviranta, that was a good line.
It was.
And so if there's a playoff Miles Wood version that still exists, and it doesn't have to be Yoel Kiviranta in this current equation, then that can be a player that does help that bottom six and is the clear-cut guy who should be in the lineup on a nightly basis. This is nothing against Jimmy Vesey. It's just there's a little bit more proof of concept in what Miles Wood has been in Colorado previously, and now Parker Kelly. I've really liked the year that he's had.
I think he's really good.
You know, it's good to have those options. I know that the Kiviranta in it all isn't necessarily wowing you, but I did like Kiviranta in the Winnipeg series.
In the Winnipeg series. Well,
he's a reader. Chloe, don't clip this.
The playoff version of Kivy that we saw last year, I'm with you. If you see that again, then yes, that is the exact type of fourth liner that you do want playing in the playoffs, just that style. He's, as we saw last night, he's got the ability to finish the puck, finish the play, finish a goal.
We're doing good.
Score a goal.
It's going well.
Score more points. And so again, like I really like what you've done, 1 through 4. And I just keep going on. I even asked Chris McFarland when they traded Mikko Rantanen, and he said, we aren't deep enough. We're not deep enough to win a Stanley Cup. And I liked his point that now the players got to go out and do it, but I think they put themselves in a position at least where they can compete for a Stanley Cup with this roster they've got here.
Certainly, because I felt they could compete with the roster they had yesterday that played against the San Jose Sharks. And I certainly felt there were vulnerabilities and areas that I wanted them to improve on, but it's just because of how good players like Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and even Devon Taves and Mackenzie Blackwood are that give me confidence this is a team that can make a run, but they needed to add a little bit more to make them more well-rounded. And I think they're more well-rounded today than they were yesterday.
I agree. My only drawback, the only thing that kind of keeps this from really being a home run of a deadline for me is I would have liked to see one more little bit of improvement on the back end. Because look, I think you've got a really good 1 through 5. You got Makar and Taves, you got Girard, and I'm going to just pair guys up for the sake of pairing guys up. You got Girard and Manson, then you got Lindgren, and then that 6th spot is suddenly up for grabs. Hey, Sam Malinsky, you survived. You're here.
You survived.
You survived the deadline.
It's crazy.
Right. So now you have the opportunity to go out and earn that 6th spot going into the postseason and showing I am the right guy to play next to Josh Manson or Ryan Lindgren. I do like that there's been some competition opened up there on that back end that in my opinion, Malinsky, Eric Johnson, then Keaton Middleton are all going to fight for that spot. So we'll see. Maybe I'm saying right now I would have liked to see him do one more thing, but who knows? Maybe Sam Malinsky does take that extra step that you were talking about yesterday, saying I'm hesitant to make him the 7th D because I don't want to stunt that development. He's going to get a chance to bypass that.
Well, I felt that was a really important part in the decision-making around the back-end addition. So it's not like Eric Johnson, again, not doing backflips and cartwheels, though over the cultural fit I am.
Yeah, for sure.
It's if you got a guy, though, who would make a case for being in the lineup more on a nightly basis, it comes at the expense of Malinsky's development. And then at that point, what are we doing?
Right.
And so I think they had to make a decision. Like, are we serious to giving Malinsky some runway, giving him some reps, giving him some opportunity? Because he was a Black Ace last year. Like, he got to experience the Avs in the playoffs, be around that team, benefit from that learning, that I think you just don't want to stunt his, I'm going to call it development. I know he's an older player, but it is important. You know, Caleb Jones wasn't made a better hockey player in Colorado sitting out of the lineup. And when he did play, it was rusty and it was evident. And so you just had to get serious then about what Sam Malinsky was going to mean to this organization. And I think that they did, because Eric Johnson is the perfect blend of being a guy that doesn't necessarily need to be in the lineup every night, but there's veteran experience. He understands Colorado systems, that he can probably slot in on an emergency basis a little more comfortably than other players would. And so I think that's best case scenario in some ways. It's the Middleton of it all that's like a little bit of a question mark. I think that's where maybe you feel a lack of comfort. But Jacob McDonald's on a 2-way contract. He's still in the American League if they needed to break glass in case of emergency. I know maybe that doesn't instill a ton of confidence in people, but he's having a hell of a season there too. So I just think they had to get serious about Sam Malinsky, and they did. And similarly, they had to take a gamble on Josh Manson, and they did.
Well, I like that they're giving Sam Malinsky a chance to earn it. Let's wind this down. I do want to talk about what is, without a doubt, the biggest story of the day in the NHL. And, you know, Megan, it's partially a Central Division conversation. It's partially just a Western Conference conversation. Mikko Rantanen, 8 years with the Dallas Stars, signs the extension as part of the trade. One, the Dallas Stars get a premier goal scorer in the league, and two, the Carolina Hurricanes have some egg on their face after this whole, the way that this is all played out. They do end up recovering a couple assets. You get Logan Stankoven, you get a couple first-round picks, a couple third-round picks. I guess just what are your thoughts with where all this landed? Not just Dallas being the team to land them, but the way that this all played out for the Hurricanes.
Well, we did talk about it a lot at the earlier show, so people should go listen to that for some more Mikko Rantanen thoughts in depth, because my perspective on it remains pretty similar, that the Avs walk away from this pretty cleanly. It became quite a messy situation. It became very messy for Carolina as an organization and very messy for Mikko Rantanen as a player. He's going to have to really evaluate his relationship with his agent closely, because only Mikko Rantanen will know if this is truly what he wanted or if things got off the rails so much that this was the closest thing to getting back on track that was possible for him. Yeah. And I don't feel in my gut that this is what he would have wanted at the end of the day. And to have him come back out west in the Central Division with a team that the Avs are going to have to cross paths with in their quest for the Cup for the foreseeable future, it adds for an intense storyline that's going to be fun to watch, but it's also going to be hard to watch because Mikko Rantanen shouldn't be a Dallas Star today, and I feel very strongly about that.
Well, it is just, you know, it's so funny because that's a team that has been a big rival for the Avs going all the way back to the 90s when it was the Avs, the Red Wings, and the Stars every year. It felt like these are teams that have met in the playoffs several times. As the league has realigned and moved divisions and added teams and expand, these two teams continue to find themselves in the same division, constantly having to go through each other. And for the same, you know, the Avs having to go through Mikko Rantanen. Well, Mikko Rantanen is going to have to go through the Avs if he wants to see any postseason success as well. So it's just, you know, you give credit to the Dallas Stars for looking at what the Avs have done and the moves that they made to improve and saying, we've got to do something as well. Now, I do think that, you know, if this is a Dallas Stars podcast, I think there's a lot of conversation to be had about what happens next. That's a big number that they've given Mikko Rantanen. But, hey, look, you got a premier goal scorer, a player that is going to make a difference for your team. Now, there can be a conversation for later about stylistic fit, age, what other contracts that team has to deal with. All that stuff, you know, that's a conversation for later. Real quick, let's just talk about the Carolina side of it. You know, you mentioned Mikko Rantanen. We don't know if this is actually what he wanted. Time will tell. the Dallas Stars. We'll see how this works out. Time will tell. For the Avs, they've kind of, they got what they needed out of it, and they've just been able to watch all this play out. The Carolina Hurricanes, they come out of the deadline not really looking like contenders, and they're looking like a team that actually took a step back and ended up with a futures deal. And now they've got to take that and go try to spin it in the offseason into some, real pieces for them. But again, here they are. It's Jake Gensel last year. It's Mikko Rantanen this year. Just another situation where the Carolina Hurricanes end up with nothing, and they still don't really have that go-to guy, that real goal scorer that can make an actual difference for them.
I mean, I'm going to say that it's just subtraction. Like, I get that they get Stankoven out of it, some picks, but at the end of the day, the loss far outweighs the addition. And so it's still a net negative in my eyes for the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because you look at the usage of a player like Necas, and it was already a little bit befuddling. I know that his year maybe wasn't to his own personal expectation, but his minutes were being shortened. He was playing in more of a third line role. And as we've seen in Colorado, immediately plugging in on that top line and finding success with McKinnon and, really absorbing the responsibility of those minutes quite well. It's bigger than just the deadline for the Carolina Hurricanes too. It's the deployment and the decision-making around how those players get utilized. Jack Drury is one that I feel as a time will tell too, because we keep hearing, and I think there's more for Jack Drury in Colorado. I think there's even more of a production bump that we can see. That just makes this even worse for Carolina, that there's something in the vision and the execution for even the current players beyond the deadline that I think prompts greater concern for their future.
Well, it's not like it's a terrible place to live. Like, you got a good place to live. They win games, but there's something going on there that players, high-end players, are saying, no, thank you. And it's just all really interesting.
I found it interesting. This is just like a small little kernel, because I think of Carolina as being a very good defensive team in terms of their structure. And I think because they're solid defensively, I think that they're a puck possession team in a different sort of way. It's just a lot of great decision making with the puck. And when the Carolina guys came over here with Drury and Necas, and we were talking with Bednar about it, the way that he spoke about Carolina systems, it was with maybe like a rigidity and an aggressiveness to a fault of how defensively minded they are, that I just even think having players like Necas and Drury unchained by Colorado's system is helped them to find success. And I bring this up because I feel like Colorado gets criticisms for what Jared Bednar decides to do with his players, right? Like, one, the way they execute defensively loans itself to their offense and how it gets created. And similarly, on the heels of the comments about we're not the high flying powered offense that we used to be, I don't think we're giving this team enough credit for how they still fit in alignment with that vision.
They're still a top 10 goal scoring team,
certainly, and a lot of it's coming from the top at the moment, but I do think that there's a freedom in playing in Colorado that lends itself to the Colorado bump that we talk about with players. And so I'm looking at Nelson and I'm looking at Charlie Coyle, and I just feel a sense of pride for how Colorado systems can help players to thrive. And I think it's something that has earned a little bit of praise even. And there's a lot of work to be done. We were just talking before the Four Nations break around the concern of a lack of depth scoring, and that is going to then mean everybody needs to step up to the plate. So there's still a lot of that to be answered for in the remaining games in the season, but I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. So your inflection there, that was a Lecky finish to the sentence, and I'm excited to see it.
I'm excited to see it.
All right, we're gonna get out of here. We've been at this rink for way too long. Chloe, do you have anything? Chloe, do not talk about the people that are watching like that. Jeez Louise.
Such a mouth on her.
I know. Unbelievable. A bar of soap for dinner for Chloe.
He's feeding people soap. Whoa.
We're getting out of here. We'll be back at it tomorrow. We will have some availability with any new players that we did not get to talk to today. That'll happen tomorrow. Avs are taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. We will be there for all of that. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. A busy 24 hours for the Avs, but it was fun. It was a fun ride here. Definitely some of the most active we have ever seen this organization be. And now, like Chris McFarland said, it's time for the team to take over from here and take it the rest of the way. Management has done everything they can. They've given them every opportunity and all the players that they think they need. Now it's on the team. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us all day. More content is on its way, so keep an eye out. Guerrilla Sports on YouTube, on Twitter, everywhere. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.